the Carnival of Chaos, the day the Olympics almost died. If you were to ask a historian to point to the exact moment when professional sports completely lost its mind, they wouldn't point to a modern doping scandal or a riot in a soccer stadium. They would point to a scorching hot afternoon in Missouri on August 30th, 1904. This is the story of the Olympic marathon at the St. Louis World's Fair, an event so disastrous, so comically tragic, and so bizarre that it nearly convinced the International Olympic Committee to ban the marathon from the Games forever. It featured raw rat poison as a performance enhancer, a runner chased off course by wild dogs, a competitor who took a nap mid-race, and a winner who drove most of the way in a car. To understand the madness, you have to understand the setting. It was 1904. St. Louis was hosting both the World's Fair and the Olympics simultaneously. The organizers wanted to showcase American greatness, but they ended up showcasing a carnival of horrors. The man in charge of the games was James Sullivan, a figure who fancied himself a man of science. Sullivan had a theory he wanted to test on human subjects. He believed that purposeful dehydration was the key to athletic endurance. He wanted to see what would happen if you pushed human beings to their absolute physical limit without giving them water. So, on a day when temperatures soared past 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius, with suffocating humidity, Sullivan permitted only 2 water stations for the entire 24.85-mile course. One was a water tower at the 6-mile mark, and the other was a roadside well at the 12-mile mark. That was it. At 3:03 p.m., during the hottest part of the day, the starting gun fired. 32 runners took off. They weren't just battling the heat and thirst, they were battling the road itself. The course wasn't a paved track. It was a dirt road used by local traffic. To make matters worse, the organizers had cars driving ahead of the runners to clear the path. These cars kicked up massive clouds of thick, choking dust. The runners weren't just breathing heavy air, they were inhaling dirt. Within miles, athletes began to drop like flies. One of the American hopefuls, William Garcia from San Francisco, was found lying on the side of the road, coughing up blood. The dust had coated his esophagus and ripped his stomach lining. He nearly hemorrhaged to death right there on the dirt. He was the first casualty, but certainly not the last. The cast of characters running this race seemed like they were pulled from a fiction novel. There was Felix Carvajal, a Cuban mailman. He had raised money to come to the Olympics by running across the length of Cuba, but upon arriving in New Orleans, he lost all his cash in a dice game. He had to hitchhike and walk to St. Louis. He arrived at the starting line minutes before the race began, wearing heavy wool street clothes, a long-sleeve shirt, and dress shoes. A fellow athlete took pity on him and used scissors to cut his pants into makeshift shorts. During the race, Carvajal, who had not eaten in nearly 2 days, became starving. He stopped at an orchard to eat some apples, but they turned out to be rotten. Suffering from severe stomach cramps, the Cuban mailman decided the best course of action was to lie down on the side of the road and take a nap. He literally slept while the Olympics continued around him. Then there were Len Taunyan and John Mashiani, 2 Tswana tribesmen from South Africa. They were actually in St. Louis to be part of a World's Fair exhibit, a human zoo, essentially, but decided to enter the marathon. They ran barefoot. Taunyan was running a fantastic race and looked like a top contender until he suddenly veered off course. He wasn't tired. He was being chased by a pack of feral dogs. He lost nearly an hour running for his life through a cornfield before he could shake the animals and return to the race. While Carvajal slept and Taunyan fought off dogs, an American bricklayer named Fred Lors was leading the pack. But the heat was getting to him. Around the 9-mile mark, severe cramps seized his legs. He couldn't go on. Lors did what any sensible person would do. He hailed a car. He hopped into an automobile and waved at the suffering runners as he breezed past them. He rode in comfort for the next 11 miles. However, karma has a way of interfering. The car broke down near the 19-mile mark. Feeling refreshed and rested from his ride, Lors decided to hop out and jog the rest of the way to the finish line. The crowd in the stadium roared as Fred Lors entered. He crossed the finish line with a time of under 3 hours. Alice Roosevelt, the daughter of President Teddy Roosevelt, was waiting to place the gold wreath on his head. Lors smiled and played along. Just as the ceremony was about to begin, someone from the support crew burst in, screaming that Lors was an imposter. Lors immediately claimed he was just joking and never intended to keep the gold, but the officials were furious. He was banned for life, though the ban was lifted a year later. So, if Lors was the fake winner, who was the real one? Enter Thomas Hicks, an American runner born in the UK. His journey to the finish line is perhaps the most horrifying example of early sports medicine. By the 10-mile mark, Hicks was exhausted. He wanted to quit, but his handlers, a team of scientists, refused to let him stop. They weren't going to give him water because of James Sullivan's Dehydration Experiment, but they did have something else. When Hicks began to collapse, his trainers fed him a mixture of egg whites and strychnine. Strychnine is a highly toxic poison used to kill rats. In small doses, it acts as a stimulant, twitching the nervous system. In slightly larger doses, it causes seizures and death. Hicks swallowed the poison and kept moving. Miles later, he was hallucinating. He begged for food. His trainers refused but gave him a swig of brandy. The combination of rat poison, alcohol, extreme heat, and dehydration turned Hicks into a zombie. His face turned ashen gray. He could no longer lift his legs. He was shuffling, his feet dragging through the dust. With 2 miles to go, Hicks was hallucinating that he was 20 miles away from the finish. He begged to lie down. His trainers responded by giving him another dose of strychnine and more brandy. By the time he entered the stadium, Thomas Hicks was technically alive, but barely. He couldn't run. His trainers literally carried him, holding him up by his arms while his feet moved in a walking motion through the air. They dragged him across the finish line. Hicks was declared the winner. He collapsed immediately. Doctors rushed to him. If he had not been treated that very second, the 3rd dose of rat poison building up in his system would have killed him. He lost 8 pounds during the race and never ran professionally again. The results of the race were pure insanity. First place, Thomas Hicks, fueled by rat poison and brandy. Second place, Albert Corey, a Frenchman who had eaten unauthorized apples. Third place, Arthur Newton,